everyone, I'm a book blogger over at reviewsfeed.net and I'm gracing your screens today because I've set myself a bit of a resolution to start using video content. Now that's a bit scary for me, I'm not very comfortable in front of the camera and that will probably show in these early videos. Please bear with me while I try and get my bearings. Thanks. So, what's today's video all about? Well, with New Year rapidly underway, it's time to share my 2026 resolutions. Now, I did pretty well in 2025, so I feel like I'm coming into the new year with quite a positive attitude. Last year, I set myself a goal to read 45 books, and I ended up reading 48. Now, admittedly, I finished that reading goal quite early. I finished that at the beginning of December, so to be honest, my reading fell away in the second half of December once any reading obligations were out of the way. So, I'm pushing myself a bit this year, but more on that later. Last year, I also set myself a focus to read sequels of series because I had a lot that I had ongoing. And although I didn't quite finish the 10 or get up to date on the 10 series like I wanted, I got up to date with 8 and I carried 2 over into January. So I was this close. This close. So I'm not necessarily setting myself a goal to focus on series in 2026, but I'm hoping the habit of having done it over the last year, 2 years in fact, actually, I think I set this goal for the last 2 years, will basically make this more of a natural habit so that when I do start series, I do naturally pick up the sequels a lot quicker than I used to. Another goal I set myself in 2025 that I did reasonably well with was reading outside of my comfort zone. And that's something I'm always looking to do. So there is a way I'm looking to do that this year. There's a couple of resolutions to tackle a couple of different elements of that. But I did pretty well. I read books that I wouldn't necessarily have picked up myself, and they came through book clubs. But also like my own volition. I picked up a book about politics in 2025, which I would never have done before. I've also read books sort of concerning about like my health and my weight, which were very informative. Ultra processed people is certainly an eye opener. So yeah, I've got a little bit of a different way that I want to try and approach this year, and I hope you can stay tuned to find out what exactly I'm doing to tick that box this year. This year, I'm taking a bit of a mixed approach towards my reading goals in that I'm setting a couple of traditional reading goals that are kind of quantifiable, but then I'm also setting a couple non-traditional goals as well. Now, I always start with a reading total for the year because I need a number to chase, as December last year sort of made clearer to me. When I finished my reading list, I just tanked with my reading. So because I did quite well last year, I finished quite early, I am pushing myself a little bit harder. So last year, for a comparative figure, I set myself a goal to read 45 books. This year, I'm upping that to 60. So, and I know it's doable. I've done it before. I have read 60 books a couple of years since 2017 when I started doing all my blogging and reading kind of jazz. I also have read more than that. The most I have read in 1 year is 72, but that was a bit much, and I'm not pushing myself that hard. So 60 feels like a nice number. I know it's doable, but also it's going to push me to read a little bit more than I did last year. So that feels like a nice mid-ground. My next reading goal is one that I haven't set myself before, but I'm looking forward to trying. This year, I'm setting myself a fixed reading list. So I have a variety of books that I want to get to in 2026. They could be recommendations. There are some banned books I want to get to. But there are also things like classics and other books out of my comfort zone that I want to push myself to read. I have 16 books on this list in total, and these are the books I'm planning to read in 2026. So we have The Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. We have Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children by Ransom Riggs. The Good Samaritan by John Mars. Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Murder Trending by Gretchen McNeil. The Colour Purple by Alice Walker, Alias Grace by Margaret Atwood, Yellow Face by R.F. Kuang, The Great Hunt by Robert Jordan, Eve by Kat Bohannon, Julia by Sandra Newman, 1984 by George Orwell, The Great Passage by Shion Miura, Bridge to Terabithia by Catherine Paterson, Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov, and The Kite Runner by Khalid Hosseini. Now, I apologise in advance if I've mispronounced any of those names. I have done my best to check up on those before recording. So that's a fixed reading list that I'm looking to get to, and that's something I've not done before, so I'm looking forward to it. In January, I've already got a couple of these reads on my list, particularly Yellow Face and The Great Passage, where I'm starting with these. And obviously I will be looking to maybe try and incorporate a couple of these in every reading list over the course of the year to spread these out. There are a couple I'm looking to read one after the other, and that's 1984 and then Julia. And that's because obviously 1984 is your core classic story, but then Julia is written from the perspective of Julia in the same kind of universe. So I want to see how the one narrative compares with the other. The next reading goal I'm setting, which is my first non-traditional goal, is to target some of that getting out of my comfort zone. And really what I've struggled with in the past is to give enough time and effort to books that are more mainstream or like popular, because I tend to do my own thing. And whilst some of what I read does overlap with that, I'm not necessarily keeping up with those and talking about them when they're popular, and I miss out on a lot of engagement with you guys because of that. So really, I'm going to be paying more attention to new releases, popular series, and really trying to get my take on those series out into the wider world. So then you can kind of see my perspective and maybe consider if you want to pick those up too. Some series I have in mind as of recording, but obviously this can change and will very likely evolve, is the likes of Fourth Wing, Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas, The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon, and also carrying on The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. Obviously they are a starting point. I obviously will be keeping tabs on what's coming out, what's important, what's popular, and making my reading a little bit more topical. So I hope that's some content that you enjoy, and I'll be playing with that in 2026 to see if that's something I want to keep doing going forward. Finally, my last reading resolution, and again is a non-traditional goal, very much focuses around the fact that my bookshelves upstairs are overflowing. So what I'm going to be doing this year is, instead of buying a load of new books, is I'm going to try and prioritize the books I already own as much as I can. That doesn't necessarily intersect very well with my above reading goal of trying new things and that sort of thing. But I'm going to make those two work together as much as I can in 2026. Hopefully stem the tide that's going on in my spare room right now and eventually look to clear that down. So then I have a tidier space, much less in the way of a physical book explosion that I have going on up there. So, those are my reading goals for 2026. Have you set any for yourself? If so, I would love to hear about them and maybe why you're looking to set yourself those goals. If you haven't, is there a reason why not? As always, I would love to hear from you. Thanks for bearing with me in this first video, and I will be seeing you around very soon. My next post is going to be my monthly TBR for January, which features a couple of the books I've mentioned today, but obviously has a lot more on there as well. So do stay tuned. I hope you can join me. Bye for now.